Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get to learn a little bit about somebody else's perspective on movies. And I have a very special guest this week, Laura from Why the Book Wins, who I've gotten a chance to connect with over social media, and especially since I've been trying to read a lot more lately. But Laura, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
And before we get into the questions, Laura, would you like to shamelessly plug anything before we get started?
Yes, I would. So I have a YouTube channel, Why the Book Wins. It's also a podcast. So I compare books with their movie adaptations. And the book first movie episodes are available on YouTube or as a podcast. And then on my YouTube channel, I also do just other general book content and some movie content as well. But yeah, it is primarily book reviews and book first movie videos. So yeah, you can follow me or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also have an Instagram account. I have a Facebook and a Twitter, but I'm not super active there. So Instagram is the best social media to find me. And yeah.
Awesome. And I could proudly say, I've been following, and I especially enjoyed the I Am Legend episode that you did.
Oh, nice.
Because I Am Legend's one of my favorite books. And I've seen all the films and have varying feelings about exactly how they adapted them. And it's interesting. And also now that they just announced that they're making a sequel to the Will Smith one, which is even more interesting. And they're like, hey, you remember that alternative version that we only had on the DVD? Well, we're going to use that one. I'm like, oh, so you could keep him alive to make more movies. There you go. The search for money. But to get things started, I always love asking this question because usually either people have a really quick answer to this or hate me for asking this. But Laura, what's your favorite movie?
Yeah, this is definitely like an impossible question to answer for me. I do have some go-tos that I usually say. For example, I love The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. I love Fiddler on the Roof. I love Prometheus, which Prometheus was the first movie from the Alien franchise I ever saw. So people might be upset that I like that one, but I love Prometheus. So those are some just off the top of my head, but I don't know, I'm always watching new movies. So there's always new movies that are my latest interest, but those are some of the few that I always are off the top of my head, but.
Very nice. Yeah. Prometheus gets a lot of undue hate for not being alien. It's the kind of thing where it's just why weren't there more xenomorphs in this? I'm like, nobody told you there would be, kind of thing. But those are some good picks. And I remember seeing Prometheus in theaters with my friend Kevin and really loving it. And then a lot of people did not. And I'm like, well, maybe I might watch a different movie. But we'll just leave it at that. But now, Laura, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
So my first movie I ever saw in theaters was Seabiscuit, which I was 12 by that time. And prior to that, I just never went to the theater. So yeah, Seabiscuit was the first one, which seems like a weird one, I guess, for some reason. I don't know. But I think my mom had read the book.
Okay.
And there was a lot on cable TV at the time, about Seabiscuit, since it's a true story. And so we had been watching those shows leading up to the movie. And then my whole family went and saw Seabiscuit.
There you go. I remember Seabiscuit was a pretty big deal around when that was coming out. How did 12-year-old Laura like Seabiscuit?
I think the movie itself, I enjoyed it, and I've watched it as an adult, and I still enjoy it. But I think, for one, I remember people in the audience would clap at different times throughout the movie, and I remember thinking that was weird because I was like, this is a movie theater. Is this normal to be clapping? But I do remember it was so exciting, right? Because I loved movies. I had just never been to a theater. And so the experience of it was definitely really exciting and very fun. And so even though it's not my favorite movie, I still look back fondly on going to see it.
There you go. I was literally just having a conversation over the weekend, recording a podcast with some of my friends on their podcast, and explained how I think it's really weird that people cheer and clap during movies.
Yeah.
Because I just sit there, I'm like, nobody can hear me clap and cheer for them. And then people get upset with me that I'm just sitting there not actively reacting. I'm like, I'm watching the movie.
Yeah, especially if it starts to interfere with the dialogue or something. I guess at the end of the movie you can clap, but even then it feels weird to do. So
It's like, well, the projectionist, you did a really good job.
Yeah.
Give them a hand.
Yeah.
Now, Laura, do you have any particular favorite genres of film?
Dramas are definitely what I prefer watching. I watch like all genres and I have movies in each genre I enjoy, but I just enjoy dramas, which are just more straightforward, I think. And it's just more, I don't know, it's just about humans living life with like regular things that happen in life. And yeah, so dramas.
It makes perfect sense. And, I think it's a lot easier to connect with like a straight up drama because as you pointed out, it's a very human experience. And those are things that we can relate to. And obviously, all genres try to, through whether it's like symbolism or representation, try to do those things. But a good drama can really hit you
Yeah.
nice and deep.
Yeah.
Now,
Definitely.
do you have any particular filmmakers that you like?
Yeah. So I was trying to think about this, and I thought of like all of the usual ones that like are super famous, like Spielberg and Scorsese and Tarantino, and I like Ridley Scott and Christopher Nolan, Guillermo del Toro. I like a lot. Alejandro Inarritu I like primarily because I love Birdman and The Revenant, so that made me follow his movies. I have not yet seen Bardo though. I like Greta Gerwig. Huh?
I was just saying it's beautiful. It's a little all over the place.
I've heard mixed reviews, so I definitely want to see it, but I haven't been in a rush to watch it because it's long, and I've heard it seems like people either really like it or they were like it was boring and it was too long. So I'll be watching it, but just haven't yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Greta Gerwig too. I like the vibe of her movies. And Barry Jenkins, Moonlight, and If Beale Street Could Talk. I love both of those. So yeah, those are some of the directors that come to mind. And Spielberg, he's someone that I kind of forget how much I like, but I recently saw The Fabelmans, so his movies have been more on my mind lately. And yeah, his movies are so diverse and they're also good.
Yeah, on my other show, Welcome to the Wasteland, I went through all of his films last year. And it kind of helped remind me, it's like, yeah, there's a reason why Steven Spielberg's one of the greatest filmmakers and one of the most famous filmmakers of all time. Kind of take him for granted a little bit. I feel like most people at this point. And
like some directors like Tarantino or Scorsese or even Christopher Nolan, like when you're watching their movies, like it's one of their movies, like they have a feel. Whereas like Spielberg and like Ridley Scott, even I feel like his movies, they're so diverse that you don't automatically know like, oh, this is totally a Spielberg movie, right? And so I kind of like that they are like almost invisible but doing an amazing job at it. So
I was just having a conversation with my colleague because I was in his office and he had Color Purple, the book. And I'm like, so I was talking to him about it. Yeah, and like we're getting a new adaptation, and like I had just saw the Spielberg one for the first time last year, and it's like very much not what I would expect from Steven Spielberg kind of thing. And having watched all of his films, he made a lot of different kinds of movies, which is exciting and interesting.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
I also recently watched Triangle of Sadness, which I posted on my Instagram, and so now, like later today, I'm going to watch The Square, and then I want to watch his version of Downhill. So that movie has kind of made me, even though I've only seen the one so far, but it's definitely made me want to go explore all of the other movies he's done.
The Square was one of those international films that came out a couple years ago that I missed and wish that I didn't, and for some reason haven't watched yet. But it's on my watch list, and especially after watching Triangle of Sadness, I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to check this out. And I was shocked with how much love Triangle of Sadness got at the Oscars for nominations, and the fact that Ruben Östlund got nominated for director for it. I'm just like, well, it was something.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll win any of its nominations. Like with some of those, I might be surprised, but it's cool it got nominated anyway.
Yeah, I think that's probably the movie that people have seen the least that got nominated for best picture, except maybe Women Talking.
That one surprised me that it was nominated.
Me too. I liked it, but it didn't, like, when I sat and watched it, which give it credit for having extremely accurate title of just being literally an hour and 45 minutes of women talking with each other. But like I was a little surprised I got nominated for Best Picture, especially because there's probably some other things out there. Like I was personally hoping that Glass Onion would get nominated for Best Picture on an outside chance, but it didn't. So, but hopefully Ryan Johnson might get some love for
Yeah.
adapted screenplay because
Yeah.
it's a
Which
sequel.
this kind of falls in with your question of best director too, but I also watched After Sun, and I'm definitely interested to see what Charlotte Wells does in the future
Yeah,
because I feel like that one deserved more nominations because all it got was best actor.
I feel like that'll because like that's a tricky thing. A lot of A24 films clean up at like the Independent Spirit Awards, but don't get like a ton of big attention at like the Oscars because they're voted on by filmmakers and people that watch movies, and it's just like I don't know how many people saw After Sun, but like
Yeah.
it's a beautiful movie. And good
Mhm.
for Paul Mescal for actually getting nominated for Best Actor for that. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, but he was great in it, so it's cool he was nominated.
I was honestly thinking they were probably going to give it to Tom Cruise at that point for saving cinema, uh,
Yeah.
which Steven Spielberg literally walked up to him at the Critics' Choice Awards. I think was like, "You saved Hollywood." Just
Yeah.
like thing Top Gun did, made a lot of money.
Mhm.
But this is actually a nice segue into my next question, which is more in front of the camera. But who are some of your actors and actors, favorite actors and actresses?
Uh, so one of the first that comes to mind is Michael Fassbender. I love him. Christian Bale, Denzel Washington. Um, I wrote some down actually in case I forgot. Oh, Kate Blanchett, Daniel Day-Lewis. I love Nicolas Cage. I know people have mixed feelings about him, but I think he's amazing. He doesn't always pick the best movies, but I feel like he always gives a great performance, even if he can be over the top in his Nick Cage kind of way. But I also love old movies too. So I love
Mhm.
William Holden, Audrey Hepburn, who I feel like Audrey Hepburn is one of those movie stars that has become like people love the image of her.
Mhm.
And so like she's just so commonly known. But anyway, I thought she was a great actress. And yeah, I feel like there should be more I'm thinking of, but those are the ones that come to mind, which I also love reading celebrity memoirs,
Mhm.
especially good celebrity memoirs. And Gabrielle Union was an actress that I liked, but she wrote two memoirs and I read both of them and they were amazing. So that just made me love her like as a
There you
person
go.
and as an actress.
She really got me in the inspection. That
Oh, I want to
was
see that one. Yeah, I've heard great things.
she was she was so great, but it's so uncomfortable watching her interact with her son in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, like towards the end of the film, I'm just like, this is so uncomfortable, and she's so good, which makes me really uncomfortable watching this. But oh, she was great in that, and I appreciate you bringing up. I love William Holden. I remember seeing Bridge on the River Kwai for the first time, but it was really like I took my mom to see Sunset Boulevard in theaters when it had like a re-release for like TCM and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So great. Also, one of my favorite like narration voiceovers at the beginning of the movie, like, yeah, it's me in the pool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
that's a
trope's
great one.
so bad now, but like it was so great then, the
Mhm.
first time that you see it. Um
Yeah.
Now, Laura, do you have a particular film that you feel like you just watch every day?
Um, so there's movies that like I feel like theoretically I could watch every day,
Mhm.
but I don't actually have a movie that I like
Yeah.
watch regularly. But I love musicals. So for one, I feel like musicals are ones that I could rewatch because you also just get to rehear the
Mhm.
music over again. So I love Singing in the Rain. I love Camelot, Rogers and Hammerstein, like those older movies. I also love The Green Knight, and I watched that one a few times after it came out, and like I didn't get tired of watching that. I haven't seen it since around the time it came out, but still, it's one I watched multiple times. Same with The Revenant and Birdman. I remember when those two first came out, I watched those multiple times and I loved it. And then Mad Max Fury Road is another one that yeah, I watched multiple times and I was like, wow, like I just don't get tired of this. So yeah, those are some that I enjoy and I think are very rewatchable and entertaining. And so you don't get
Mhm.
bored with it, even if you've seen it multiple times.
I love Fury Road, as you can see by the poster of it behind me in my office.
Oh, nice.
And also all of the Mad Max branding of everything that I do, because Welcome to the Wasteland.
Yeah, which
But
I
like
haven't seen any of the other Mad Max movies. I keep meaning to, but I just
it's
haven't.
one of those things where it's like, and as a fan of the franchise in general, because like I remember watching the first one in Road Warrior in college, I feel like you once you watch Fury Road, you're kind of like all the other ones are kind of just like, well, these were what he made it because he didn't have money.
Mhm.
And like Fury Road kind of feels like if he had this money the whole time, this is what he probably would have made. And I still love the Road Warrior a lot. The first one you can tell was made for like no money.
Mhm.
And not everybody was an actor in it. Uh,
Yeah.
so like literally, I don't think everybody in the actual movie were actors. Because I think it was made for like $100,000, and it was
Oh,
when George Miller was still a surgeon in an ER trying to put it together because he's an actual doctor,
wow, I had
which
no idea.
and which he got ideas from seeing people coming in from car accidents. So, and there you go. But yeah, Fury Road's amazing, and I'm also a big fan of musicals, and it's that special feeling of like throwing on a musical, and like even if you're not fully watching it, you could still
Enjoy
experience
it.
it.
Yeah.
And like I have a playlist on my Spotify that's called Why Are They Singing? And it's just like all my favorite songs from like musicals and stuff like that. And
Nice.
In the Heights came on. I'm like, I need to rewatch that. And also more people needed to watch that because like nobody saw it and made me sad.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Well,
That's another one where I kept meaning to go see it and then I just never did and I still haven't.
well, I think that year was tough because not a lot of people saw West Side Story either.
Mm.
And like Tick Tick Boom just dropped on Netflix. And like that was a really good year for musicals, and I really liked them a lot. Tick Tick Boom gave me a little bit of a existential crisis as I literally watched it on my 30th birthday because it came out on my birthday, and the first song's him singing about turning 30, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is messed up. But I could definitely relate with the musical thing though. Now, Laura, what's a film that you really love that relates to another interest of yours?
I mean, I have like hobbies outside
Mhm.
of movies and stuff, but the first one that came to mind are just adaptations, right? Because a movie that's adapted from a book
Yeah.
relates to my love of reading and books. So adaptations, I guess, would be the most fitting answer.
Now this might be a hard on the spot follow-up question to that, but what are some of your favorite like this was a great adaptation of something that you read?
So last year, The Power of the Dog, that book is incredible, and the
Mhm.
adaptation was amazing. Same with The Lost Daughter, which going back to directors, I hope Maggie Gyllenhaal keeps directing because she did a
Mhm.
great job with The Lost Daughter. But then other ones, I mean, there's movies that are better than the book. For like another favorite actor is Paul Newman, and Cool Hand Luke was better than the book Cool Hand Luke. But then another one that was like on par. I mean, Rebecca, that's my book right here.
Mhm.
The Hitchcock movie, which Hitchcock's another favorite director I didn't
Mhm.
mention. But his version of Rebecca was incredible too. Um, oh, The Green Knight. I thought that was a great adaptation. I loved that one. Um, Let me think. I know there's more. Goodfellas. I love the book
Mhm.
Goodfellas, but the movie, like they're right on par with each other. And I know there's more, but those are the ones that are coming to mind right now.
Well, that was pretty great for me asking you on the spot without any prep, so I appreciate it. Which also, the first Rebecca adaptation I saw was that Army Hammer one for
Oh
Netflix,
man.
and I'm like, I'm sure the Hitchcock one is better than this because what is this? And then I
They
watched Rebecca a couple of months ago, and I'm like, yep, knew it. This would be great. And there you go.
Yeah, and there were so many changes. Like there were things Hitchcock did in his movie that like kind of had to be done because of the times. So it's like,
Yeah.
man, for 2020, they could have like shown things and done things that like the censors wouldn't have allowed, but
Mhm.
they didn't. And instead they made other changes where it's like, wait, what? Like you're totally changing like the whole vibe of the movie and like changing the characters in such big ways. Like I don't need an adaptation to be exactly like the book, right?
Yeah.
And even if a character looks different or something, but if it's something about them that was like key to the plot and to everything that happens, for example, Maxim. is like the same age as the main character in Rebecca, where like a huge part is the fact that he is like 20 years older than her, or like 25 years older. I don't remember now, but him being older than her was like such an important part, and they made them be the same age. So that was something that really annoyed me.
It's like, nope.
There was a lot in that movie.
Really need Army Hammer here. And in
Yeah.
hindsight, did you? Did you really?
Yeah.
You also brought this up a couple times, but I love The Green Knight so much.
Yeah.
And that was one of those A24 films that I think was a little too weird for the Oscars and didn't get like any love.
Yeah, it was so sad.
So sad.
It should have got something like editing or costumes or one of those kind of things. But
costumes, production design, score, cinematography, like something. And
I watched the movie first before reading the book. And so I went into the theater just not knowing like anything. And it like was so much more like mystical than I expected, and weird and creepy. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Dev Patel is another favorite actor. I love seeing him in things. So I hope he has something coming out soon.
He was so great. And Alicia Vikander, who I hadn't seen in a while, popped up in The Green Knight, because I don't think she really did much since like Tomb Raider when that came out. And she was so alluring. Like she played two characters in it, or did she play two characters? I don't know. It's one of those kinds of things. But she was so great in that too.
Yeah.
But my next question is, who's a movie character that you feel like you have a special connection with or you relate to?
I have a hard time with this with books too, when people ask that, where it's like, who's a book character that you just like connect with or you feel like you identify with? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's stories where it's like, oh, the overall story I can identify with in some way. But as far as like a specific character, yeah, I don't know. Like I get immersed in books and movies, but maybe at the same time, like I don't get so immersed that I'm like, wow, I'm so much like this character. I don't know. So I can't even think of anyone that I would say. So yeah, I don't know.
That's perfectly fine. And here's the thing, I make the rules around here. So if you don't have an answer to the question, you don't have to have one. So, but it's like, it's an interesting thing. Cause like, I know some people that it's like, oh, I'm that character. And like, I feel like most, human beings are a little too complicated to just whittle down to like a character that you spend like 2 hours with in a movie.
Yeah.
Or like, I think a book might be a little bit easier because you probably spend a little bit more time with them, but even still, it's like we're complex creatures as humans. It's hard to boil us down to things. And like you said, like you could relate to like a journey a character goes on or something like that. And like I know, because like whenever I don't have somebody lined up, like I'll even answer these questions on an episode or something like that. And like I did these questions, and I really connect with Perks of Being a Wallflower and like certain aspects of that character in it. There's certain things I'd never experienced that obviously are a big part of what that character's experience was. But like, I think just like the Wallflower aspect of that in high school, like I related to that and like just kind of floating around. And I wish I had a cool Paul Rudd teacher when I was in high school.
I saw that movie. Yeah, I saw that movie like over 10 years ago now. And I remember just thinking it was okay. But in recent years, it feels like so many people look back fondly of it and like love that movie. And I think it's based on a book. So I thought of covering it because I'm like, maybe it's better than I remembered, because I didn't even remember that Paul Rudd was in it. So that tells you how much.
Yeah, he's the English teacher that gives him all the books to read and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure it was directed by the author too, which is interesting. Wow. So like that's something you don't generally see.
I've never seen that
unless you're Stephen King and trying to do Maximum Overdrive and then doing something terrible. But like I thought that was an interesting case with that. But now, what's a film that you love, Laura, that you feel like would be surprising?
Well, I am pretty adamant in my dislike for superhero movies. And even last year, I was with my family and they wanted to go see Doctor Strange. And I sat in for like the first 10 minutes of the theater, and then I just couldn't take it anymore. And I left and I saw something else while they watched that. So I'm very anti superhero movies, which if you like them, I don't mean offense by that. But I do love the Iron Man movie, the first one from
Mhm.
2008. So I watched that a few years ago and I was like, wow, I actually like really enjoy this one. So that might be surprising to people who know that I don't like superhero
Yeah.
movies.
Well, and I think that original Iron Man film was much more character driven, and also even like it was so much more small scale in hindsight, especially compared to like you go see Multiverse of Madness and you're going through alternate dimensions and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. This is just a guy who realized like, you know what? I've been kind of a bad person and I need to be a better
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And also, and like obviously everybody fell in love with Robert Downey Jr. With Iron Man, and I love me some Jeff Bridges too.
Yeah.
So I
Same.
enjoyed him. But hey, you know what? I'm a huge fan of comic book adaptations and stuff like that. And I have a lot of friends that don't like them either. And it's like, here's the fun thing. People have different tastes,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So, but and you know what? That Iron Man film really struck a chord with people. And that
Yeah.
was, launched for better for worse, complete reshape of cinema. So there you go.
Mhm.
Which is
Yeah.
also why Martin Scorsese's crabby about it, which that's the fun part. I wish people would stop asking other artists what they think of Martin Scorsese's thoughts about that.
Yeah, with me, like someone else, Quentin Tarantino recently said something against superhero movies. And because I'm someone who doesn't like them, I always
Mhm.
love it when I hear a director say something against them. I'm like, yes, like hate on superhero movies.
I
Um,
just,
but
you know,
obviously they make a ton of money.
they sure do. And like a situation like I remember when Francis Ford Coppola jumped on the train right after Martin Scorsese. I'm like, you haven't even made a movie in like how long? And when was the last time anybody liked any of your movies? And probably Dracula was the last one that he made that people
And that was still so long ago.
it was like the early 90s. It was 30 years ago, which I want to see Megalopolis happen. But sounds like there's a lot of issues happening. Like half the crew
Mm.
walked off set,
Oh, that's
and
the one with
he's
Shia LaBeouf, right?
uh, is he in it? There's a lot of people in this new Megalopolis film that Francis Ford Coppola is making. He's self-financing for $120 million.
Wow.
I'm like, well, taking a chance. Last time he took a chance like that was Apocalypse Now, and like multiple people almost died, and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Mm.
But my last question for you, Laura, is what do you love most about movies?
So I do love character-driven books
Mhm.
and movies, which I never thought about that with Iron Man, but that totally makes sense why I like it because it is so character-driven and he has such a great arc. But yeah, I love them because you can be in the shoes of someone else, and it can be someone who is like totally different from yourself.
Mhm.
And so I love that too because you're in the shoes of someone who's had experiences that you've never even had to deal with or thought of. Um, so I love just how it creates that empathy for others by watching these movies. And of course, I just love like the escapism of it where you get lost
Mhm.
in a story, even if it's like a sad story or a heavy story, or even if it's one that's not totally escapism, because maybe I can relate in a way and it's bringing things up inside of me. But I love that too, where it just makes you feel things.
Mhm.
And like, I just love movies where you can tell like the person making it just like loves making movies and they're passionate and you know, not to hate on superhero movies, but I feel like the superhero movies, they're just like all about the money. And so movies where you can tell like they weren't focused on the money, they were just wanting to do something they loved and tell a story that they wanted to tell. And their passion motivates the actors to give like incredible performances and just like I feel like you can tell, right, when a movie
Mhm.
just has that passion behind it. And so it just is so inspiring to see people creating just incredible art to share with the world that's so meaningful and powerful. And yeah, and like I want a movie that like manipulates me in a way to feel something, right? But when a movie manipulates me in a way that's not obvious, because when you can tell where it's like they want me to cry right now because they just did this and this character did this, and like clearly that's what they want.
They
But
killed the
when
dog.
yeah, but when you like feel things and it just happens and you're not like seeing it before it happens, when it's not
Mhm.
obvious, yeah, it's just so masterful. And so, yeah. Yeah.
Your comments made me think of, because like I'm a huge fan of Robert Eggers,
Mhm.
and you can tell how deeply he cares about history. And because like he makes a lot of folk horror, he is an actual like historian. He looks into all these things, and you can tell that he's like, you're not making the witch to make a bunch of money, because like it's in
Yeah.
old English and it's like it's set on a farm and it's disturbing. And the tricky thing is, like, I love the Northman, but no, that wasn't gonna make $90 million back,
Mhm.
which I wish it did, because now I don't think he's ever gonna get a budget like that ever again.
Yeah.
But he's probably just gonna wind up going back to A24 maybe. But he is making a Nosferatu
Oh
adaptation,
yeah.
which will be interesting.
Yeah, I'm
Which,
excited.
it's a Dracula story, so maybe that'll
Hmm.
make money, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But it's one of those kinds of things where, like, when you can really tell that somebody cared a lot about
Mhm.
what they were doing. And there's films out there that you can feel like, well, they just hired this director to make this movie, and it's just
Yeah.
like they made it and they're hoping to make a few bucks along the way. But
Hmm.
how I always like to wrap this up, and I don't really explain this beforehand, is I like to have my guests ask me a question. So,
Oh.
what's one question you would like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
Um, what I was going to ask, what was the first one? You could do both, I guess. What was the first movie and the most recent movie that was just like an incredible theater experience where you just like when I watch a great movie, like I almost like feel high afterwards because I was like, wow, like that was amazing. So what was the first movie where you experienced that? And what was the most recent one?
I'm trying to think of some of like the early experiences. Like, the earliest movies I can remember seeing was Indian in the Cupboard was the first movie that I actually went to go see, and then I saw Space Jam. So like I was really little. I was like 4 years old at that point. But I think the first movie going experience that hit me, that I remember having such a great time, was Shrek, and which is also
Nice.
why Shrek is one of my favorite movies of all time. And because like I was 10 and I'm sitting there, I think this is hilarious. And then my mom's sitting there, because my mom and my aunt took myself, my brother, my cousins, and like the oldest one of us was 11 and the youngest one was like 5. And we're all sitting here laughing at the things. And my mom and my aunt are like, when Ginny's like, eat me. And it's just like, they're like, wait a minute. And they're obviously, as an adult, Shrek is so much better because you get all the laughs now.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of things in that you do not pick up on as a kid.
Yeah.
But I just remember laughing so much and having a fun time with that. Um, and the most recent one that I had a great experience watching, what's interesting is, we were talking about this beforehand. I see a lot of films now that are press screenings, and they're a very different vibe, because like generally it's not a bunch of people like really getting into the movie a lot of the time. Um, I did go to a press screening recently, which I'll never forget. This was for Magic Mike's Last Dance, and you walked up in the theater and they had exotic dancers that did it they were dancing with some of the women from the crowd before the movie, and they gave out cookies shaped like men's torsos and just abs and everything. It's just like, this is ridiculous. Now, watching the movie, not a whole lot of people were reacting during it, but the one that I sat through recently, which I saw the most recent Ant-Man movie, which this kind of made me sad. At the end of the movie, I heard like, I'm like nobody was reacting at all. But when I saw Megan at the beginning of
Mm.
January, that was a fun crowd. That was so much fun. People were laughing so much during that. And I did not expect that movie to be as funny or fun as it was, because it's January, it's a horror movie. I'm expecting it to be straight trash.
Yeah.
And it was surprisingly fun, and it made me have a little bit more faith in Blumhouse again, because they've kind of soured on me recently with a lot of their films. But like, that was a fun time. You know, say what you will about like comic book movies and stuff like that, but there's a very different kind of experience showing up in a theater and having people just like riotously cheering all of a sudden in the middle of a movie, or watching the new Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure every single girl in the theater screamed when Andrew Garfield popped up on the screen.
Yeah.
But definitely Megan, that was a ton of fun. I had so much fun watching that movie, and now I can't wait to watch the unrated version that um we were originally supposed to get, but then
Yeah.
a bunch of Zoomers on TikTok got really into the trailers and like, oh crap, we need to make this PG-13.
Hmm.
So we'll see. But that was a fun question. That's it's definitely one of the things during COVID I really missed was actually going to a theater and watching movies with people.
Yeah,
And even
definitely.
now, most of the time I do go on the weekends. I'll go at like 1 o'clock on a Saturday to my AMC, and there's like 4 people in the theater,
Hmm.
and it's sad.
Yeah, I think movies lately that I've seen, yeah, they haven't been that busy. The only one was when Dune came out, and I saw that like the following Tuesday, and it was like a matinee showing, and yet the theater was full, and I was like, wow. But ever since then, like that's the only one that's had like a good amount. So it is kind of sad when it's like, oh man, like where is everybody?
I have a fun experience seeing Dune on a Saturday night because 3 different families brought their infants.
Oh, yeah.
They were screaming, they were crying, and then some teenage
Yeah.
boy started screaming the F word at these babies. And I'm just like, wow, kid, you're really making this better.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there like, I want to watch Timothy Chalamet's giant face on the screen and all this sand, and you're all just being obnoxious.
Yeah, wow,
But
that's so annoying.
I think the besides a press screening, which there's usually a decent amount of people at those things, I saw Knock at the Cabin randomly on a Sunday afternoon, and the whole theater was packed. I'm
Oh,
like,
nice. That's good.
Shyamalan still got it.
Hmm.
Just like there you go. People are like, I'm either going to see a masterpiece or a train wreck, and I'm ready for whichever one I'm going to get. So there you go.
Yeah, I read the book that one is based on. I
Mhm.
haven't seen the movie yet. I kept meaning to, and then things have just come up. But so I'll probably wait till it's streaming at this point, I guess. But I
It
already read about
probably
how it
actually, you
ends,
know what?
and yeah, it ends very differently than the book.
That's what I heard. My friend Vinny, who I've known since college, and he's part of like my movie club, he
Mhm.
reads a lot too. And he has a tendency, if he knows that a movie's coming out that he really wants to see, he'll go out of his way to read the book first. And he read, was it Cabin at the End of the World?
Mhm.
And he said it was great. And but from what I can tell, they changed the ending a lot,
Yeah.
which I've only seen the film, so I don't know what they changed about it. But I don't know if it was like more hopeful.
I mean, I
Uh
can tell you the ending, and you could always edit it out.
or you could tell me when we're done.
Yeah.
Let's save some time there. But
Yeah.
Laura, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.